right, guys. I think we've given folks some time to get in, excuse me, get in and get settled in. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here on our patching and predictive proactive monitoring platform webinar. This is going to be the third installment of an ongoing educational series where we focus on the 7 pillars of cyber hygiene. Today we'll be talking about patching and monitoring, and you know, how important it is for the timely patching, you know, making sure we know what we're doing, looking at some interesting monitoring platform information. We'll check out a demo from LogicMonitor, our partner. If there's any questions, definitely let us know in the chat. We'll be checking those throughout the presentation. Today, we're going to be joined by Patrick Carpenter of LogicMonitor. They are the only fully automated cloud-based infrastructure monitoring platform out there. Hello, Patrick. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Steve. Thanks a lot for that. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Great, great. And we're also joined by Jeremy Dodge, Manager of Operations here at BlueBridge. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for stopping in.
Howdy, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we jump in, though, a little background on BlueBridge Network. We were founded in the year 2004. Headquarters is here in Cleveland, Ohio, right downtown. We do maintain a presence in Columbus and Mayfield Heights as well. We are a Tier 3 SOC 2 Type 2 compliant data center that provides co-location, public and private cloud, managed services, pretty much covering the whole state of Ohio. You know, running a data center, Jeremy, can be challenging, you know, somewhat. It's something that we're constantly investing in for our infrastructure to make sure we can provide the best possible solutions. Do you have any insight maybe on kind of some of the things that's going on behind the scenes at BlueBridge?
Oh, thank you, Steve. So specific to day-to-day, you know, really, it's always about continuous improvement. We're always reviewing our controls, our systems, our platforms, making sure that they're enterprise, they're up to date. And, you know, really, it's all about, at the end of the day, confirming that security, the availability and the reliability of the services that we provide to our customers and constituents. So it's never a dull moment. It's always it's always happening. So we're always busy here. We're led by some you know, some great people, our CTO, our managing directors. You know, we all work together, you know, really with all through the lens of customer focus, right? And ensuring that we're meeting the expectations and responsibilities for our customers, and providing the best products out there to do so. So
absolutely, absolutely. It's a great team to be a part of. We look forward to this presentation. Thank you, Jeremy.
Of course.
I'd like to flip it over to our partner at LogicMonitor, Patrick Carpenter. Patrick, if you could tell us a little bit about what you do for LogicMonitor and kick it off for us.
Yeah, I'm happy to. As mentioned, my name is Patrick Carpenter. I am one of the solutions architects here at LogicMonitor. On our MSP team, we have an MSP-specific team in the LogicMonitor ecosystem to assist service providers like BlueBridge with using LogicMonitor and optimizing their experience with it. Before LogicMonitor, I worked myself in the MSP industry for about 10 years in both technical roles as well as some business administration, and then I worked in inside IT before that. So just a broad technical background. I help customers, you know, associate or figure out whether their technology is going to be a good fit for LogicMonitor.
Awesome, awesome. I'm excited to see the platform in action. That is something that we use here at BlueBridge, but certainly enlighten our guests here, Patrick.
Yeah, we want me to jump right into the platform here. Let me get that going. Great. So I wanted to cover the architecture briefly, just to make sure, you know, that all of our attendees understand how LogicMonitor fits into the ecosystem and you know, what the platform entails. LogicMonitor is a SaaS platform, and that's kind of us indicated here in the middle of this diagram. We operate from our service centers in the cloud. That is the only way LogicMonitor operates. There's no on-premise version of that. It was designed for the SaaS era and built in a SaaS way, right? That requires kind of the hyperscale of a large cloud to be able to be delivered. The advantage there is obviously you don't have to spend time installing the core part of the software. You don't have to store the long-term metrics or alerting history and stuff, because that's all done in our cloud. As well as all these things you see down here, the things like the dashboards, which you're going to get a taste of in a minute here, alerting, reporting. All these things are delivered from the cloud as part of the service, right? So for the alerting, we can send you an email. You don't have to configure an SMTP gateway, right? You just give us an email address. We send it to you. We make it easy. How we interface with your environments is through something that's called a collector. And that's in this diagram, that's this like circle blue dot thing here. And essentially this is a Java application that runs on either Windows or Linux. So it lives inside your data center, runs on a virtual or physical machine that you provide. And it uses remote protocols to talk to your devices, right? So there's a one-to-many relationship here. We call it agentless. So if I have, hundreds of servers and some network equipment and a VMware host or whatever, that one collector can sit in there and gather data from all of that. It ships it back to our cloud over HTTPS, like TLS 1.2 or better. And that's an outbound connection, right? So you don't have to create VPN tunnels or anything like that back to the controller. Again, it was designed for the internet era. It can sit comfortably behind your firewall and just reach out over the common protocol. There's also a public cloud component for those of you who might be, using things in the hyperscale public cloud providers. We have some native integrations there to give you some stats from those providers side by side with your data from your on-premise equipment and from your public or private cloud providers that are outside the hyperscale. We give you one place where you can visualize all that stuff together. And then over here, this is just a quick snippet of the things that we integrate with. Like I said, we were built for that SaaS internet era. We can do outbound webhooks in response to an alert that can be customized, right? So you could hook that into your own custom application if you needed to. Here's just a few of the things that we've built integrations for. We also have an inbound API that is fully feature rich, and that's part of this integration, right? That some of these things here are doing two-way. For instance, ServiceNow, right? We can both open incidences, and ServiceNow can come back and update those incidences in LogicMonitor, and things like CMDB, so we can synchronize configuration items between your LogicMonitor ecosystem and tools to support it like ServiceNow or other tools, right? Like I said, this is not an inclusive list, just some of our popular ones. Great, so let's get into the platform. Let's look at some of the things like, how do I ingest LogicMonitor? Why would I want to have it in my ecosystem? This is going to be one of those things, right? I've got an application health dashboard here. Whether you've got Citrix XenApp in your environment or not is not that important. The idea here, Citrix XenApp is like a modern application, right? It follows the modern stack of delivery, where it's not a monolithic server that like, hey, that's my XenApp server. There's a bunch of servers, right? There's a front-end web server, there's load balancers, there's back-end SQL servers, right? And all those things have to be working, or the app suffers, right? Either my users can't log in, or the user experience is poor, or it's taking too long to log in, or any number of things. So one of the big problems from an IT perspective, right, and is when you get these calls or when you get a notification about a problem on these servers or whatever, understanding where the issue is in the stack is itself very time consuming, right? So especially if my application is down and my users can't log in, business is losing money, and I've got users opening tickets or calling in, and so I'm having to deal with all that as well. And so I want it fixed as fast as possible, right? And so getting to the root cause of what's wrong is essential to that. So that's what a view like this allows you to do, kind of an application-centric view where I can jump in and say, okay, here's all the infrastructure that makes up this application. Here's things like dependencies for that infrastructure. So this is a Windows SQL server, but it lives in a VMware environment, right? So I can click on it, get some details about it here, but I also can see there's some virtual hard disks that live on particular data stores. So I'm getting deep insight into that full stack of where the application lives without having to jump between tools or go in vCenter and be like, hey, which server is that again? And figure out where the disks are. It's exposed, right? So if there was an alert present, and we can see there's some alerts up here for some of this other stuff, I can click on those to see them. They're like, some generic alerts we just haven't cleared up in here. But you could see that, if there was alert on the data store, for instance, like maybe the IOPS are pegged, or the disk latency is super high or something, right? That would be visible to me immediately, right? I might not think, right, if I'm the technician who's taking the first call, I might not think to go look in VMware first to see what the disk IOPS are, right? But if LogicMonitor gives me that visibility right away, I can see it, and especially if it's been flagged with an alert, I'm going to know like, hey, that's probably our performance issue. Let's figure out why those IOPS are pegged. right? But maybe it's not that easy, and there's no alerts for your devices, and you just need to figure out, okay, well, where's the slowdown? What's the throttle point here? Like, where are we failing out in our application? The rest of this dashboard, we've exposed different key metrics from each layer of this application, right? Starting at the end user experience, where we're running, maybe a synthetic transaction or a login check or something against our app to make sure it's there, and assigning an SLA, so even creating a business level metric around that response time, right? So it doesn't. We're creating content not just for the technical audience, but for ingestion by our business users as well. And then as I'm continuing down here, I'm seeing those key metrics, right? Here's that load balancer layer so that I can see, like, has anything shifted here, right? Have I had a change? Here's Microsoft IIS, like, is the IIS server restarting too much? Is an app system itself reporting any problems, right? That it reports metrics in WMI or wherever about its performance, so we can pull that out and present it here in LogicMonitor as well. SQL Server, right? And have the connection spiked, or is there a problem with the buffer caches, or maybe the deadlocks have spiked, right? Like, these are some common things we've seen that are indicating, like, yeah, you've got a SQL problem or it's SQL layer. Give me that visibility right here without having to go look for it. And then right through the Windows VMs and right through the host layer in the VMware virtualization, right down into the hardware layer. So those of you with on-premise data centers or whatever, where you still have some physical hardware to take care of, LogicMonitor gives you that visibility right into that storage layer, and then right down into the network as well. So without having to jump between tabs or different tools that look completely differently, trying to align timeframes, LogicMonitor gives me one place where all that stuff that's delivering this app is visible to me. And then if I had caught something like, oh, this is my problem, or the ping times went up here, what else was going on, right? I can highlight that area, I can apply that to my account. And now again, as I go back up and double check, okay, what were these other resources doing during that trouble point? All these graphs have been updated to do that, right? And you can see I'm not waiting a long time for these graphs to be drawn. It's coming in really quickly. And so, my workflow is not being inhibited by like waiting for page loads. When I'm done with that time range, I switch it back to defaults. Otherwise, it'll keep following me around, right? Which is nice, right? If I need to go check other things or other devices, maybe I want to go check and see what the internet bandwidth was at a location during that time period. We're going to stay locked in until we're done and release it. Similar kind of idea here. This is just kind of like a top level view for Windows servers in particular. And the nice thing about the way we do these widgets is that they're dynamic in nature. And so, for instance, you're seeing here like top Windows by CPU utilization, top memory, top volume utilization, right? With the idea being that my engineer's eyes need to be on where my applications or where my servers are busy, right? And I don't want them to have to go look at 10 different dashboards to see across all my regions. Like, maybe I have hundreds of Windows servers. It might take a long time to go look at all of them and see what their memory usage is like, right? But here, LogicMonitor is just across my hundreds of Windows servers. Here's my top 25 or top 50 or whatever consumption of memory, and giving me that visibility right into it. Also, things like this widget over here, where we can do predictive analysis on things like disk space growth. So here, as I'm checking out my data center, do maybe my morning, check on the health of things, I can see things like, okay, here, this disk is going to go into alert in 92 days. So, and obviously not a critical issue right now, but if we've got a maintenance window between now and then, let's schedule something to happen there, right? Clear up the disk space or expand the volume or whatever. That way we can deal with it before there's an alert, and that forces us maybe to schedule an out-of-band management, right? Out-of-band maintenance window, and disrupt user activity to fix a disk space issue, right? So we can see that stuff coming, plan for it, and be more efficient because we're not disrupting our users to get basic stuff like that done. Another really nice thing is, what maybe I'm coming in here looking at things and you're just wondering, like, okay, these disk IOPS, is that normal for these servers to have this level of busyness? And LogicMonitor gives us a quick way to answer that question. We have this anomaly detection pop out, where I can pop out a view of, and what it's now I'm looking at is one data point at a time for these disks. And this blue range we see down here, that is a predicted range that LogicMonitor has built based on the way this data point has performed in the past. And this is one of the areas where that automated monitoring really hits home, because this technology can also be used to create dynamic thresholds. And those dynamic thresholds will have the ability to both alert us when things like change from their normal behavior. And like, these spikes here, the red ones, these are anomalies. It wouldn't have alerted us, right? Because we came back down, but if it pegged up here and stayed, right, and that's not normal, like LogicMonitor would know that it predicts here based on daily or weekly or monthly seasonality as well, when a thing's going to spike, right? So monthly backup happens, IOP spike, LogicMonitor learns that and wouldn't flag it as an anomaly, right? But if in the middle of the day it's doing that when it's not normal, I do want to get an engineer involved, right? So without having to set static thresholds for these things, that can be really difficult, right? To have static thresholds for things like disk IOPS and stuff, because like, it's just requires a lot of manual intervention, a lot of manual tuning of hundreds or thousands of data points, where here we can use AI to do that by giving us these kind of like a real-time analysis and providing thresholds based on that. The other nice thing here is that we can actually suppress alert activity with these dynamic thresholds too, for like, let's say we had a static threshold for IOPS. If it was normal for that server to go just into maybe the warning level of those IOPS, the dynamic thresholds could be configured to suppress that alert so that we're not sending an email to our engineering team and disrupting them for what's really known behavior, right? It's normal for the IOPS to be busy, so they don't need to know about it. They probably already do. And so we're not wasting their time by making them come in here and retune the threshold. The dynamic thresholds just suppressed the notification. But if it went, suddenly spiked way up above what's normal, then we would get the engineers involved, right? Because then when we have that change in our environment, that's where we need the human level of intelligence to understand whether that's a problematic change or something that we can just ignore. And of course, organizations today are highly reliant on SaaS applications like Office 365, Salesforce, or Zoom, which obviously became really popular in the last year and a half. And so, knowing if that's working, knowing if that's available, knowing how your users are using those tools is now more essential than ever, right? And a lot of us have work-from-home workforces that never had it before. So keeping an eye on how these SaaS tools are being used is very important. Making sure we can have availability from like a broad area, like if you have users all over the country. Here, we're just doing some basic response times here, where you could have a probe in each one of your offices that goes and hits Office 365 portal to make sure, yeah, in each of our locations, Office 365 is accessible. And here's some metrics brought forward, right, about how we're using it. Things like SharePoint site usage, or OneDrive statistics, or even some licensing details about how we're using our licenses, or if we have surplus ones. So there's lots of good data there that of course is available in the Microsoft tool as well. But it's nice to be able to create these unified views where I don't have to teach someone where to go find this in Office. I can build these dashboards. Like, these things are very easy to click and drag, move around. You can build specific dashboards for your teams so that they can get even like kind of non-technical visibility into these services very easily, right? And even where you could deliver this as a report to them. So yeah, I can create essentially a shareable link here that goes outside the platform, right? So we'd be careful about what kinds of data we report on this with, where anyone who has that link can just open it and get a point in time snapshot of the dashboard that lives in an S3 bucket. So it's a nice way to deliver like compelling reports to your end users that can include visual details that just show them like, hey, everything's good, lots of green check marks to keep executives happy and off the back. All right, digging in a little bit more. This is a device level view we're looking at. I just pulled up a switch. We've got this Juniper switch. We're a device agnostic platform, so we support enterprise and SMB grade network devices from across the gamut. So whatever you've got, chances are we're going to have support out of the box. And if not, it's easy to create support in LogicMonitor for new devices. But this Juniper is what I've chosen to show you here. When we onboarded this device, all we had to do was provide the credentials, right? SNMP community or SNMP v3 information if you're using v3, SSH credentials if I want to get the configs, which we did, so we provided it. And then LogicMonitor really takes it from there. It goes and figures out this is a Juniper switch. It goes and applies what we call data sources, and that's these things over here. And these were built to be automated, right? They apply automatically to technologies that match them. And so, in LogicMonitor, we didn't have to go build, right, support for the Juniper EX3300, right, and then figure out what goes and applies to it. The data sources were all designed to just go check a device, right? Hey, does this device have a web server? Okay, great, monitor it, right? Oh, does this device have Juniper components, right? Or does it have fans or whatever, or temperature sensors? We go discover those things automatically, and we'll rediscover them on a continuous basis, right? If you added a network interface or defined a new VLAN or something, LogicMonitor will go find that. Some stuff checks every hour, some stuff checks once a day, right? So if you make a change and forget to touch your monitoring system, LogicMonitor will catch the change, see it, and start monitoring that new thing, so that when the time comes that you needed the data for that VLAN, right? We're trying to figure out like, hey, why is our user performance poor off this port or whatever? It was there, right? Because it was an automated onboarding and an automated continuous discovery. It's all based around using templates. So like you can set custom thresholds, have different thresholds for different priority systems, and all that's built around a templated approach where as soon as I put a server in that critical folder in our resource tree here, it will automatically get the types of thresholds that I want it to have. Also things like traffic visibility, right here in the same pane of glass, where it's, okay, I figured out the internet interface is maxed out on our firewall. Why? That's the answer NetFlow gives me, right? Get in here, see a visual of what that traffic is doing, see the top talkers, source and destination endpoints, so you can figure out like, oh, it's someone's torrenting again or whatever, or there's a lot of Netflix being watched. And so our internet connection saturated, but you can see that that's exactly what's going on and who's doing it, so that you can take whatever corrective action is necessary to get your network back on track. I mentioned the tree, but then you guys couldn't see it while I was doing that. So, this is essentially what that device tree is going to look like in LogicMonitor. The portal we're looking at here is for a service provider where they've got a multi-tenant kind of setup, right? Where they have lots of customers who might have nothing to do with each other, that live within a single pane of glass here from the provider's perspective, so that the provider can provide a unified support experience, has maximum visibility into what those customers are doing, but the customers also can have visibility in here. We can create logins for our end users so that they can come in here and absorb their own dashboards or whatever, right? See things like this executive overview where they can just see like, hey, here's all of our stuff. The lights are green, there's no alerts, our SLA is 100%, right? Something as simple as this, very easy to create in LogicMonitor. And then when I get those users in here, they're not going to see, right, all this stuff. It's not going to expose who my customers are. The role-based access control is very good, and it's only going to see what I've been granted. And so when that future message go executives in here, all they're going to see is their dashboards. And even I could turn off all these buttons over here, right? For my portal administrators need all this stuff, but my users who are just consuming dashboards, I can just lock them in so that all they see is that dashboards button, so they're less confused and they're not bothering me with questions. Here's also just another quick view that does a couple of things for us here, right? These are some cloud-based applications, right? Maybe we're running them in Azure, maybe we're running them in our public or private cloud provider. But what we can do is provide meaningful context for what those servers do, right? So similar to the Citrix NApp dashboard that I showed you before, but this dashboard especially is really more focused on a business level metric, right? Like, hey, we're a bank or whatever. We've got our banking services, it's payments, it's customer front end, it's reporting. It's kind of 3 applications that we're supporting here. Here's the infrastructure it lives on. Here's the independent availability of each of those modules. So helps communicate the kind of urgency, right, to whatever the technicians. Maybe I've got someone who's triaging instances who's pretty new and doesn't know a lot about what this Red Hat server does. This provides that contextual information so that they understand, oh, this is the front end, this is a big deal, right? This is part of the banking service. And so that we know which systems in our environment are the highest priority and which ones, are part of, the office wireless or something. And if it's the middle of the night, no one cares about office wireless. One more thing I wanted to show you here, and this is one of the places where kind of like automated intelligence is delivering in a big way on the operations side, and it's this idea of doing log analysis and looking for what we call log anomalies. So similar how on the metric side, we've got our anomaly detection view, we've got those dynamic thresholds that are looking for changes in the environment. Like where if it's normally doing something, we probably don't care, but if it normally does something and it stops, that's normally where I need a human to get involved. And then we've taken that same logic to the way we do log analysis so that we can do something cool like this, right? What we're actually looking at here is an alert message. And this is kind of what an alert would look like. Like if you got an email from LogicMonitor, you'd have a verbose email like this that would kind of tell you why you're being alerted. In this case, we've got a HTTP 400 returning on one of our sites. And so obviously the site is down. So, I'm the triage engineer. I come in, I get this, for first 5 minutes of it, classic, pre-log analysis tool. If I've only been, I'm just a triage engineer, maybe I'm going to reboot the web server and see if that fixes it, right? That's like a common fix that works a lot. But it doesn't fix everything, right? If there is actually an underlying configuration problem, the reboot won't help, right? And the reboot might just be a stopgap fix, because if something is happening, it's going to break it again. So what LogicMonitor allows me to do is, while I'm doing this analysis, I can click on this graphs tab within the alert, and it's got cool graphs here, other metrics from the data source. And if this is if there are a lot of metrics in this data source, I'd see that right at my fingertips here. So it makes triaging this event pretty easy. But what we've also added here is this layer of log anomalies. So we're receiving logs for this device. And what our AI does is it learns the normal log behavior for a device, right? So that you've got connection from blah, 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 open to this library table, right? Whatever, there's lots of logs, right? Those of us who've been around IT for a long time, right, understand that, thousands, tens of thousands of entries a day, 3 of them I care about, right? What we're trying to do is find the ones you care about, with the theory being that those are the ones that are unique, right? That hasn't happened before. That's especially from an operations perspective, right? We're trying to figure out, the operations teams wants to know why things changed, right? It's the change, it's the new log entry that often points me to that. So LogicMonitor has identified 20 that happened around the same time that this alert occurred, right? Here's the alert in this timeline. There's a bunch of log anomalies that LogicMonitor received in the minutes before the site went down. And when I just scroll down here, they've been spoon-fed to me, right? So here's document root doesn't exist, right? Which is like, those of us who know Apache are like, oh, that's your problem. You're trying to load a website that doesn't exist. But there's also some more data here, right? An Ansible copy happened, some user was connected, some other stuff, right? But there's a lot of enough context here that for me as, with the triage engineer, maybe I'll understand like, hey, I can't fix this just by rebooting. I'm going to escalate this to the web team, but they're not going to get that cold escalation, right? Those of us who've been around IT long enough, we've all gotten these, right? It's just like, hey, that server's down. And like, what do you mean? Is it down? Can you not ping it? Is the site not responding? Like, there's just down can mean a lot of things. But our triage person doesn't really have the expertise to give us anything better, right? So we can't really get angry at them, because just like, they're just doing their job. But now we've put the data in their hands, right? So now the site's only been down for a few minutes. I'm on Slack or on the phone to the web engineer, and I'm like, hey, here's these weird errors. Document root doesn't exist. Ansible copy invoked. Does this ring any bells to you? And of course, the developer is going to be like, oh yeah, we just ran, a deployment. We just did something in Ansible. Maybe someone fat fingered a spelling. I'm going to go fix it, right? So we've jumped right to our root problem, and that escalation is now, that person doesn't need to go log into the server and load the logs and then go figure out, what time did it break and all that stuff, right? Which would consume another 10 to 15 minutes, even if they had like, a nice log analysis tool like Splunk. Maybe the operations team can't get the data out of it. They have to go ask someone else to get it, right? So this is like really shortchanged that 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of troubleshooting. And now, we're going to be able to get this site back up very quickly. So that's the big idea with our approach to logs. There's also, other stuff you can do in here. There's a query your logs and search by device, and you've got the full text if you wanted to see, outside of the anomaly, what happened. It's all in here for you to construct. And, it's something that we'd be happy to show you. You can definitely talk to BlueBridge and arrange, an opportunity to take a look at anything you've seen here today. But that's all I had for now. So Steve, I guess back over to you. And I'm going to stick around for the Q&A, but thanks a lot for letting me participate.
That's very awesome. Thank you, Patrick. Boy, there's a lot of data points there, a lot of information. It looks like it would take weeks, months to get it fully deployed. How do you guys achieve that, and what does a typical deployment look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the nice things about the SaaS approach, right, is that essentially the bulk of the platform is there running. It's just ready for you to go. Like at whatever point you decide to start deploying, whether it's your first deployment or you just brought on a new office and you need to get that equipment in there. We are one of the fastest monitoring tools to deploy because, again, that central is there. You just need to drop these collectors in, which is also itself automatable. There's a Dockerized collector. You could just script the install in other ways. There's also a Kubernetes-based collector. So lots of ways to even automate that deployment if you have a very large environment. But essentially dropping that in and then providing the credentials is all we need. So, we do a lot of deployments here at LogicMonitor. They range between like 4 and 16 weeks, with the 16 weeks being customers who have like thousands and thousands of devices. And kind of the more average is probably that 4 to 6 weeks, and that includes, right? These are sessions where you're getting some hands-on and understanding how to use the platform and how to understand how to group your devices so that it makes logical sense. So, but by the time we hit the end of that, you're fully deployed, you're working, you're going with LogicMonitor. Alerts are going to who you want them to go to, and that's hard to do in other platforms a lot of times because you're spending so much time on the back end that you've already spent many days working on the project before you even get the first device in there.
Sure, that makes sense. I love that predictive feature too. I know our guys use it. It really helps to prevent downtime. AI has taken over the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're all in IT, right? So all of us understand AI, and there's lots of buzzwords, and people don't always understand what that means. But this is definitely one of those areas where there's a great application for it because it's good at understanding patterns and being able to identify things that are unique. And sometimes it's just noise. Like not every anomaly is going to be great, but oftentimes it's going to point you to things that you otherwise didn't think about, right? Or even problems that like are coming, right? So weird firmware glitch or something in your SAN controller, right, might throw a weird log entry that you're just going through and reviewing your anomalies. And again, a lot of times just talking about, I'm on the operations team. I just want to take a quick look at my log anomalies. Out of the million in the last 24 hours, maybe there's like 50 or 100 anomalies I just need to take a look at. If any one of those points me to something that could prevent an outage, that's obviously really valuable, and it doesn't take a long time to read 100 lines.
100%. I love it. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for showing this, the platform, and thanks for being such a great partner.
Yeah, great to work with you guys.
Thank you. Our next panelist, Mr. Jeremy Dodge, again, Manager of Operations here at BlueBridge. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about yourself, what your day-to-day looks like, and school us a little bit.
Oh, thanks, Stephen. I appreciate that. Yeah, so name is Jeremy Dodge. I am the Manager of Operations here at BlueBridge. Been here for about 10 years. I started as an engineer here, primarily focused on the network side of things. That's kind of where my initial love came into the game. By virtue of being here for several years, I started to get into other arteries of the business and just overall general management of the data center, working with our CTO and our manager, again, of managing director, and always again working for the customer, right, and making sure that they're served. That's really the focal point of my job day to day. Always working in the support ticket system. I love getting my hands dirty with that and solving problems, day to day. And they always come up. So
what do you mean?
Well, we solve them, but every day is it's a new and exciting day. So yes, it's always fun here.
Yes, it is. We've worked together for a number of years. I've learned a lot from you. On the IT side. I know enough to be dangerous, but you guys behind the scenes are definitely the Spark group and keep everything running. Give me your take, if you could, on the importance of patching, what it is, why you do it. I'm sure most of the people on this webinar have heard about patching, but give us the ins and outs of it and why it's important.
Sure. Well, in efforts to make this succinct webinar, we'll just kind of we'll dance on the highlights. So patching, in its simplest terms, is really about updating software code to remedy bugs, mitigate security vulnerabilities, improve features and functionalities to software. Specific or relative to the importance of patching, it ensures the stability in the operation and operability of the platform that you're running on. And equally to that, the overarching security, right? So security patches can mitigate and fix vulnerabilities that can leave an organization susceptible to cybersecurity attacks. It's not an all-in-one defense, but it's a great component to that. And secondarily to that, really around the security is from a compliance perspective, right? So, I've been doing audits for years here at BlueBridge, and there's just simply hasn't been an audit that didn't have or include, a patch management policy that adheres to, a compliance standard, whether that be, NIST or ISO or NERC or HIPAA. It's a really huge part of ensuring that patching is being done, and and there's a process around that patching process. So you have your stability, you have your operability, you have the security, you have the compliance, then you have the IT guy, right? Or your IT staff or your vendor. And they're entrusted with patching a multitude of systems, right? Whatever that may be. Pardon, did I lose my camera? I think I did.
Oh, you're good.
I still see you.
Okay, good. Great, awesome. So patching is a laborious task, right? And pressing that update button can have an unintended result. And speak from experience on that. So as a service provider, we're extremely sensitive to that notion. We dedicate QA and demo environments where we mirror production environments to actually test rollouts of patches before we push them into production, really for a litany of reasons, but ultimately we don't want to impact user and customer experience. And on top of that, we do that for customers a lot. So customers will call upon us to say, hey, can we spin up an environment in your cloud? Can we clone an environment that we have today? We have this massive upgrade that we need to do. We have a new application that we want to roll out, or we want to update this application. We do that a lot here at BlueBridge, to make sure, that customer is okay, right? They're comfortable with that patching process. They're coming from, I know, not I think this will work. But there's always gotchas. And even when you push them out into production, our CTO has imparted the rule of threes with regards to recovery, and just really ensuring, that you always have a point or a rollback procedure. And we do. That's another thing that we are actually audited against, just specific to any sort of maintenance that we do, that there is a rollback procedure, right? Whether that, from a systems perspective, we have, a VM snapshot, we have a backup, we have a potential SAN snapshot. We may have, a device, where we're mirroring that. We've mirrored that data externally on outside gears. So we have a lot of protection mechanisms around that to kind of mitigate any sort of unforeseen issue. So a lot to digest there, but essentially it's a fun and challenging topic, man, for sure.
So, I get the importance of it. Most of the IT folks out there, they get the importance of it. Let's say a customer wants to go to a big box provider. Is it just included? Like it's just done, or do you still have to worry about it?
Oh man. So I wish I could say that was the case, right? I wish that, hey, I moved everything to big cloud provider who goes unnamed on this webinar. Everything's safe, right? Everything's good. Unfortunately, unless you have an agreement with that particular partner or vendor that is supporting your OS, your application, your network, that's not going to be the case. And what's another challenge on top of that is being with a big provider. it's a larger attack surface, right? I don't want to say more of a target, but they are there more, right? So we have customers that reside in a lot of those different providers. They have a massive ecosystem, whether it be here, there, cloud is ubiquitous, right? It's everywhere. There's a lot of customers, really it's part of their infrastructure. They have a cloud environment somewhere, and they call upon us to keep those updated and patched. But there is also the underlying infrastructure that serves that environment, right? So it's really essential that you're in continuous communication with your vendor to ensure that those underlying systems are patched. In our case, we do that. We patch our systems. We're audited against those systems to ensure that we're meeting that agenda or that particular compliance regulation. So in short, I guess to wrap that in a bow, just because you're up in the cloud doesn't mean you're automatically safe. It's not you're on base, everything's good. You have to, it's kind of a work together and make sure that there's two-way communication between you and your vendor to ensure that there's an understanding of where the lines of delineation exists, right? So in summation, keep everything patched as best as you can, work together with your vendor or your partner, and then have some good monitoring there that can alert you. It's pretty in the event that there's any sort of issue. So we've been using LogicMonitor, by the way, for years. I appreciate everything that they've done. It's been a really great solution for us, and I'm happy. I'm happy we use it. We do get those alerts in the middle of the night. Thankfully, it works a little too well sometimes, but it's been a great platform, and we've only improved our service as a result of implementing it. So,
Insight is crucial.
Indeed.
Patrick, I've got a question from James in the audience.
Great.
He was curious if LogicMonitor can monitor iDRAC and the Dell RAID controllers on servers and alert for failed drives and or predictive failures. Same with the NAS devices. Can it monitor and alert drive health, say on like a Buffalo NAS or a true NAS device?
Yeah, the question there is that we absolutely can do that, and most of them are going to be supported out of the box. The Dell iDRAC one, we've got that in our environment here. So individual disk status, as well as things like the DIMMs and all that stuff, the RAID controller, self-report is all in that. And for the supported SANs, that's often the case as well. So we support a lot of things from Nimble to EMC and lots of things. And I don't know which ones are in here right now. And the disk status is typically part of what that data source, what our out of the box data sources will include.
Okay, awesome. I figured you guys could probably handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have
real quick, just not to add on to that, Patrick, but
Mm-hmm.
What's great about LogicMonitor is, again, it is out of the box. It'll find those data sources, and it'll find problems that you actually didn't know you had,
Mm-hmm.
which creates some additional efforts as an IT guy. But again, just really blown away. Just you think, oh, we have this SAN, and we point a collector at it, and then we're pulling all of these data sources that we're like, oh, these are just so valuable in the efforts to be able to service it and support it and find issues before they start, right? Proactive, reactive, everything. So it's been great.
Yeah, when I worked in the MSP, I had we had customers who were, that kind of time and materials contract, right? They don't have an ongoing monitoring relationship with the MSP. And you'd walk in there and you'd see like failed disks flashing on their server. And it's just like, oh yeah, if you lose one more disk, you're going to lose everything. And it's just like, if that was in monitoring, we would have known right when it happened, right? And had Dell out here to deliver a new disk because the server was still under warranty, but they just didn't know about the problem, right? So, you're having that highly available server and all that RAID and stuff is only valuable if there's a problem with it. So,
right.
The monitoring definitely a critical piece there.
Great question, James.
Yeah, fantastic. Speaking of questions, these guys have a lot of experience here in the IT space. Do we have any other questions in the audience for Patrick or Jeremy? See any? Okay. We will be reposting this presentation to our website. So, you know, if you think someone would find value in it, please shoot them over to BlueBridge so that we could inform them. Do we have one more? Excellent. Okay. Before we go, though, we do want to raffle off our Cavs versus Magic center court tickets. It's for Saturday, November 27th at 8 p.m. We're going to do a random number generator. Each participant or each attendee has been assigned a number, and we're going to go ahead and bring that random generator up and see who the lucky winner is. 76. Let's see here. That is, looks like Linda. We'll reach out to Linda. I don't want to give out full names here, but Linda, you did win, and we'll
Nice.
go ahead and reach out after the webinar, and then make sure you have a fun time at the Cavs game. You know, I suppose in conclusion here, I'd like to thank LogicMonitor and Patrick Carpenter for showing us a fantastic platform. Obviously, you can see why BlueBridge uses it for all of our clients. It's just a great tool. So thank you, Patrick, for coming in. Jeremy, always learn so much from you. I really appreciate you being here and you know, educating us on patching, and you know, appreciate all of our guests here and all of our attendees. Look for us on our next presentation. Announcements will be coming out soon. Thanks all. Have a great afternoon and happy holidays.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks, Patrick. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks, Steve and Jeremy. Thanks, attendees.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye now.